All right, so at the top of 1-3 day 2, we have an opening warm-up. So the warm-up is to write those expressions in terms of variables and numbers, and then to give me the word form. So your warm-up is 1 to 8. So go ahead and take about 4 or 5 minutes to do that warm-up now. All right, so looking at number 1, 2, 3, and 4, these are all examples with which we had to write a verbal expression given that we wanted to put it into an algebraic form. So, in that very, very first one, 2 more than means we're adding. So we add 4 times a number cubed, adding 2. So 4n cubed plus 2. Nope, so if you had 2 plus 4n cubed, that's perfectly fine as well. Number 2, quotient means division. The word and tells you where the division bar occurs. So the quotient of 5 less than a number. So that's n minus 5, because you have to take 5 away from the number. Order does matter with subtraction. And tells you where the dividing bar goes. And 12. So the 12 goes in the denominator. Cube means to the power of 3. The cube of a number increased by 4. So we're adding 4 and to that number, and it has to be multiplied. So it's n cubed plus 4n. And since it said the same number, we had to use the same variable both times. Times means multiply, difference means subtract. So it says 3 times. Now it's the difference, so we're going to put this in parentheses, of a number and 8. So we're going to take n minus 8 in the parentheses and multiply that by 3. Write a verbal expression. So we have a lot of different options for this. One of the things I would say is try to use those formal words. So a verbal expression would be something like the product of 6 and a number stands for equals 72. Yes. Yes. Okay, in 6, I would say the sum of a number and 15. So the sum of a number and 15 is 91. The sum of a number and 15 is 91. Maybe here you say 5 less than, and again, there's a bunch of different ones. If you're not sure if yours is good, ask. And 8, yes. The 5 has to be what comes in front of if you use the words less than. Because what you're saying is like, here's my number, I'm going to take 5 away from that number. So like if your number was 10, 5 less than 10 is 5. But if you said 10 less than 5, now you have -5 as your answer. Does that make sense? Now, like you could, if you use the word difference, you would say the difference of G and 5. So then if you use the word difference, the variable does come first. Okay, and then for 8, you have to use those words the same number to make sure we know it's the same variable. So you could say twice a number is that same number squared subtracted by 4. You could also use decreased by, etc. So on your homework on Friday, I it said, all right, 45 to 50 are going to be talked more about in class today. So if you attempted them, that was okay. Some of you attempted them and did great. And what we're going to do now is look a little bit more closely at those types of examples. So in number 9, we want to solve for x while having a and b in our problem. So it says x divided by a plus 8 equals b. So again, we are solving for x. So to solve for x, we are going to isolate x by doing order of operations backwards. So if we have x over a plus 8 equals b, I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. I have x over a equals b minus 8. I'm going to multiply both sides by a. So I have x equals b minus 8 over a. You could also write the a in front. You must, however, have parentheses around that. You cannot say b minus 8 times a like this. That is not valid. So either of those are fine. And then where it says find any restrictions in the original problem, since I am dividing by a, we know that we can never in math divide by 0. So my only restriction is that a cannot equal 0. So the only thing we know is that a can't be 0. In example 10, we are trying to isolate x. Now I have 2 x's. So what we're going to do is we are going to move the 15 to start. And now hopefully what you notice is that I have an X and an X. So that is a GCF of the left side. So we can use the idea of a GCF and factor out an X. So we're doing the distributive property in reverse. We're taking out that GCF. So we bring X out. That leaves A plus B equals 15. So X is being multiplied by A plus B. So to get X by itself, we're going to divide by A plus B. So I get X equals 15 over A plus B. And just like before, we cannot divide by 0. So A plus B now does not equal 0. And then for 11, we have to once again solve for X. So we're going to start by subtracting away B so that I have the X part of the problem isolated. So that gives D minus B equals 2X over A. We're trying to get X by itself. So if it's divided by A, we're going to multiply by A. And again, if you have two things being added or subtracted, that multiplication has to go to both. So I have A times D minus B equals 2X. So X is being multiplied by 2. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. And I get X equals A D minus B all over 2. Going from here to there and switching the X from the left to the right side is the property we talked about on Friday, known as the symmetric property. So it doesn't matter if the X is on the left or the X is on the right. We have a tendency to write our answers with X equals being on the left. You could have left it as it was. Just again, reiterating and reviewing those properties we talked about. Now, the last thing we have to look at is that when we started this problem, we had dividing by A. So once again, we have to say that A cannot be 0 because we cannot divide by 0. The last part of the new material would be looking at word problems and being able to decide what do those word problems mean. So it says Adrian uses part of the garage wall as one of the sides of his rabbit pen. So here's our garage wall. He wants the pen to be 3 times as long as it is wide. So here's its length and width. And we need its length to be 3 times the width. And again, I only have to worry about one side for length because the other side is using the house. So this part doesn't use any material. He has 68 feet of fencing or material. So that would represent the perimeter of the pen. So perimeter is width plus 3 times the width for the length plus the width again. And again, we don't have to take into account width or length here because that's house. You have 68 feet. Combining like terms, you get 5W. Dividing both sides by 5. W equals 13.6 feet. The length, which is 3 times W, is 40.8 feet. That's a very big rabbit pen. Okay. A rectangle is twice as long as it is wide. So here's our width, here's our length. But once again, the length is twice the width, so it's 2W. The perimeter is 48. So if you go back to geometry, perimeter is sum of the sides.
Would the following students please report to the library at this time? Jerry Shuba, Madison Weaver, Alexis Fesco, Alex Fossmeyer, Levi Jenkins, Addison Kress, Jermel Lindsay, Addison Mazon, Nick Miller, Santina Zoller Hall, Daniel Woods, and Albert Turney.
So we're going to just solve our problem. If you go back to geometry, perimeter of a rectangle, which is a normal shape, is 2 times length plus 2 times width. In this case, our length is twice the width, so we substitute that in, multiply, combine like terms, and then divide. So the width is 8 centimeters, and the length is twice the width, so 16 centimeters. And you could always go and check and say, okay, 2 times 16 plus 2 times 8, and get 32 plus 16, and see that that is in fact 48. Similarly, looking at shapes and their perimeter, we have a quadrilateral. A quadrilateral is something that's 4-sided. In this case, since the lengths are all different, it's not a normal looking quadrilateral. So its ratios are 2, 3, 4, 6. Its perimeter is 132. So again, perimeter is the sums of all the sides. So 2 plus 3 is 5, 4 plus 6 is 10, 5 plus 10 is 15. solving for x, you get 8.8. It says to find the lengths of the sides though. X isn't the length of the sides, x is the value of x. So the lengths of the sides are 2 times x, 3 times x, 4 times x, and 6 times x. So to plug x in for each of those lengths, which x is 8.8, and multiply. So 2 times 8.8 is 17.6. 3 times 8.8 is 26.4. 4 is 35.2. And 6 is 52.8. So your homework is the next page, front and back in that packet. So it's 22 to 29 and 41 to 44, front and back page in that packet.